Hello, everyone. Welcome to Creative Talk. This is where myself, Fernando Del Rosario, is hosting this awesome get together. And it's a conversation between myself and an industry professional. Today's official Creative Talk episode 1, is going to be with my awesome friend and colleague, Cristina Weinheimer. Say hi, Cristina.
Hi, everyone.
Let me do a quick intro and then we'll kind of just dive right into it. I've had the privilege of being Cristina's art instructor way back then, and we'll talk about that at the Art Institute. Again, an honor for me to be a part of her career path in her first agency job to her current agency job and everything else in between. Along the way, we've developed a wonderful friendship. Her family, my family are friends. And so it was just natural. It was a no-brainer for me to have my first guest to be her on this first episode of Creative Talk. So let's please welcome Cristina.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so first, let's kick this off, Cristina. If you don't mind, just do a quick introduction of yourself and where you started from, and to just what is your current role at this point, and we'll kind of go back in time a little bit along the way.
Okay, great. Sounds good. Well, you introduced me. I'm Cristina Weinheimer, and I am a creative director with an art direction background at ConceptZombie. Working on big clients like Guthrie Ranker to small businesses or nonprofits with barely a budget. ConceptZombie is a unique advertising agency in the sense that we carefully choose who we want to do business with, and we operate on our own time. Due dates are based on our comfortability level on when we can get the work done. And really, more importantly, we hire coachable young designers with the intent to teach them as much as possible to prepare them for their next big step in their careers. And what company do you know that actually celebrates turnover rates? We want our designers to grow and basically find their way, like Miranda. And in turn, we get this ever revolving door of fresh new thinking in the form of brains that haven't been jaded by a traditional corporate culture.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm glad that we recorded this because that's a great pitch.
I probably wouldn't be able to say that again if you asked me to.
Now, okay, so I love that introduction, right? Because that's a specific type of mindset, right? It's a specific type of mindset that is not normal, that is not necessarily traditional. That being said, what about your career path? So let's go back in time a little bit, right? You were in art school. What were some of your journey along the way of agencies you were working with, companies you were working for, creative directors that you worked with, colleagues, that kind of helped you prepare this mindset of a learner's mindset of helping out other creatives along the way?
Yeah, well, I kind of want to dial that even back to before I started this career, to be honest. This, my why and why do I do what I do? It's basically, it's a simple question, right? But then incredibly complex in the same sense, because if you've ever listened to, and I know Fernando, obviously you have, because you turned me on to Simon Sinek, when he talks about finding your why, and I have a hard time answering this sometimes because right now my brain is just now it's stuck on Simon Sinek. So I'm probably going to butcher it, but he said, we are worth more than the work that we do. The work that we do is supposed to reflect who we are and what our worth is. And the way that I work reflects who I am as a nurturer. And I absolutely thrive on creating a safe space for young designers to find their way and let them know I don't expect them to fit into a mold or have to figure out everything on their own. That mentality stems from my parents. They're immigrants from the Philippines, and they came here with nothing but a carry-on suitcase and my 3-year-old brother. And then me retelling the story really won't do it justice, but I can't imagine how terrified they were to be in a foreign country with no money and how much pressure they dealt with to just survive. And then when I was born in LA, where my parents pretty much lived in a garage, my aunt's garage that was converted into a bedroom, they struggled. They wanted to give up, but they didn't. Instead, they found their way through working multiple jobs, networking with who they recognized were good people who genuinely wanted to help them and help us. My parents were able to turn every like little opportunity that they had and were given into a win for my brother and me. And I'm doing all of this because I'm paying that forward. They worked too damn hard for me to be a fly on the wall in life. And so I feel like with every career that, because I've had a career before creative direction, art direction, graphic design, I tend to gravitate towards those people who kind of do their thing and they don't necessarily conform to a mold. And those are the people that I want to learn from.
Yeah.
So of course, the most pivotal person that like I could think of throughout my career is Fernando. And we actually haven't been in a working relationship where you were my creative director before. The only experience that I had was in class, with you, teaching our advertising 101 class, you guiding us. You were so scary, by the way, back then, extremely scary. I would have never thought that we would have been friends in the future. And ever since then, even though you've never been my creative director, I've kind of taken what I've known from you and kind of was looking for that in the next places that I have gone to. So
Awesome.
Not sure if that answers your question right away, but that's kind of a setup of everything.
I love that. Well, so let's keep on going back to the future, right? Back to the past. Let's talk about that first job opportunity. I mean, I know it intimately. I was there, but share with us what led to that opportunity, and then what made you say yes to that opportunity. So first, what led to that opportunity?
So I was taking advertising. I don't even remember what number class it was. It was the first advertising class that I was taking at the Art Institute. And this is when I formally met Fernando. I'd met him before and we talked about this last night. The first time I actually kind of had an interaction with you was when you were a sub for another class. And I was like, who is this guy? He doesn't seem like he wants to be here, because he's like, what class is this? And I just
part out, by the way.
I brushed it off. No, it's good. It's good because when I had heard about Fernando, and I've heard about how difficult his classes were. A lot of my peers were like, I need to take this class next semester because I don't want Fernando. I was like, no, for me, that's usually my cue. I like going towards those things where it's just where people are too scared to take those classes, because I know that there's something about that class that they hate. But I know that that's something hard that will probably help me propel my career. So I took the class. The final of the class, we were to present what we had been working on for the whole semester, which was we pulled a brand, a piece of paper out of a hat, and it had a brand on it. And with that brand, we had to create a 360 campaign. And I'm terrified because I'm I don't even know how to do use Photoshop at this point, because this is just maybe the tail end of 1 year being into commercial art school. So I was just trying to I wrote everything down that Fernando said, practice and research. And I went out and I bought a book about how to pitch a 360 campaign to a client. And I basically just I read that for 2 weeks straight, trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? I don't want to go up in front of all these industry professionals and embarrass myself in front of everybody. Up until then, and I could tell you, the project that I had was Campbell's Chunky Soup. And I was frightened because I was I have no effing clue, where to even start. And so I just remember Fernando's we'll have a brain dump. And I'm okay. So I just wrote down everything. And the first thing that comes to my mind was just something stupid. It was Chunky, you're going to want a bigger spoon or something like that. And he picked that exact phrase out of the list of things that I had. And he was go this direction. That's exactly what he said. Just go this direction. That's it. Done. And I was okay. And then I left. I left the class with that direction. That was the only direction he gave me, and created this 360 campaign off of it. So I'm thinking about how lateral ways of how to describe what a big spoon looks like, right? So I come up with an excavator with the boom, the arm, the bucket, you know, it's just like, hey, like, what do you think of this? And he's like, change this and this and this, and then you're good to go. Keep going with this direction. That's all he said. I'm like, all right. So I got to come up with everything else. Coming up with everything else. Fast forward to when we went to LA, we drove to LA, and we had a presentation with a company called Wrap in LA. And they do client work for Toyota, Bank of America, Mattel. These are pretty like smart people, and they're very intimidating because they've been in the industry for years. I get up there, do my thing, I completely black out. And then all of a sudden, you know, I see Fernando, he's smiling and he's like clapping. And this is the first time I've seen Fernando smile. And I see the, you know, the main creative director, which is like, that's great. Like, you know, blah, blah, blah. I completely blacked out. I don't even know what I said. I don't even know how I said it. Hopefully I said it in a way that, you know, I learned from that book, that how to pitch to a client. And I go home that night, Fernando calls me and, oh no, I'm sorry, he doesn't call me. At that point, we're not on, you know, phone call terms or whatever. I think it was the following day in class. He pulls me aside and he says, hey, Wrap wants to offer you a job. And I'm like, what? They want to offer me a job? Are you sure? And he was just like, yeah, I think it's going to be a really good opportunity. This is great. Like you know, you presented really great work. They're really impressed with the concept and all the stuff. And so, yeah, naturally I took it because they were offering me, you know, a chance to basically learn in an environment where this all happens organically, and it has to happen during like, you know, like timelines and crunchy times and all that stuff. And I learned so much from that first internship, and it was insane. That was the story of how I even got there. That's
that's how. Well, okay, so a little bit of backstory on that too, and I'm sure you're aware of this, is that opportunity to be able to present, to bring the class into Wrap, is that one of their art directors was a former student of mine, Rocio Alvarado, actually. And I just reached out to her, say, here, Rocio, remember when you had this class? And remember when I brought you in at Y&R and you pitched, you know, in front of everyone? I said, now that you're there, I want to do the same with your agency. And she's like, okay, let me talk to my creative director. And then so she talked to the creative director, and he said yes, and we go up there. And so here's a little bit BTS behind the scene on that scene. When you were pitching, the executive creative director was standing next to me in the middle of your pitch. She leans over to me and says, I want to hire her. And I go, okay, yeah, let's, I mean, I will help broker this for you, you know? And I knew that Rocio was there, and you got connected with her there while you were interning there. And so, although as I like to do, I like to throw people into the deep end of the pool, there was a lifeguard there with you, which was Rocio. So
yes.
Along the way, you were learning and growing and really kind of, again, comfortable with the uncomfortableness of it all. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from there, all right, then you've had a couple of, you know, other agencies, other companies along the way. What was your next milestone from that internship? Because you were still going to school while you were doing that internship.
Yeah.
You know, we're in a room full of students here. What was some of the tips that you might have juggling an actual industry level position and be a student at the same time? What's some of the things that you can kind of share?
Well, before I get into the advice part, I think I have to go back to what triggered me to leave Wrap. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I was at Wrap, I was basically doing production artwork, making adjustments to emails specifically, and they were primarily other designers' work and who just didn't have the bandwidth or you know, time to adjust or update. And that wasn't hard, the hard part of the job. It was maybe, I think I was starting like my second year at school, and I was still super green. I didn't know anything about working in a corporate setting, and it ended up being like a huge learning experience, but it was hard. And Fernando knows this. He knows it very intimately. He was there. He was on the phone with me, you know, almost daily, me telling him about how hard everything was, just the culture, the day-to-day, the meetings, the pressure to perform, the fear of losing, the opportunity or letting people down. And yeah, in a sense, I feel like I did give up, but I kind of mentally I kind of mentally switched that, right? It was necessary for me to take a step back because I was so stressed out from just thinking that I couldn't perform. And then I started to believe it. So what you tell yourself is powerful. I was telling myself I couldn't do it. And these were just emails that I was updating, and I had to take a step back because I didn't know at the time. I thought I was, killing my future career by quitting, but it ended up being a reset. I kept going to school and I learned to equip myself better, but also found a mentor, Fernando. A good mentor can change your life. And I'm happy that I get to thank you today still, for at this exact moment. Thank you for believing in me because Les Brown said it so eloquently. And I think I told you this, probably going to butcher it too, but you can't see the picture if you're in the frame. You need someone who can see something in you that you can't see, that can take you to a place within yourself that you can't go by yourself. And who said you had to figure out all of this on your own, So I take advice from people who've gone through it and have come out of the other end successfully. And to answer your question about the milestone thing, I left rap, I graduated, and a month before graduation, we had another assignment where we had to go to another agency and basically interview. And that was terrifying because the first time I had to interview because at the internship, all I had to do was just do my project, in front of everybody. And they're like, we want you. And now I was interviewing. I was like, oh, no, I'm scared. But
real quick, that was the portfolio class.
Yes.
That Cristina, that I taught, and the portfolio class, as the class entails, you build your portfolio up. But for the final, I aligned the portfolio class with creative directors, and we went to another agency, and I secured a couple of creative directors to do a mock interview with the class. And so that's the interview that Cristina was talking about. So that was with Alcone. Yep.
Yes. Yeah, Alcone. And I interviewed right out of the gate. I interviewed with the executive creative director at the time, Luis Camaño, and that was life-changing because I was going through my shtick, I had practiced it. It almost seemed scripted, and I think he recognized that, and he's like, "Hold on a second, hold on a second," and he literally was just like, he closed my book and he said, "Tell me about you. Who are you? Let's just have a conversation. Don't worry so much about what you look like or the work that you've done. I want to know, if I'm able to work with you, if you're willing to be open-minded enough to take my direction and to grow, with us." Mm-hmm. That was pivotal. Yeah, insane.
And through that final, they offered you a job.
Yes. So they offered not just me a job, they offered another student too, Shane. They offered him a job too, both junior art director positions. But I was placed on the new business side, building decks. That's all I did, was just build decks for new business pitches. That's it. And, from there, I found my groove, creating PowerPoint presentations, Prezi at the time. I'm so old. Keynotes. One presentation we had where the potential client was actually going to come to our office for the pitch. And it was a brand. I will never forget this. It was a brand called Dr. Fresh who makes toothbrushes. And I mentioned to my creative director at the time, jokingly, completely joking, I'm like, we should make a mouth doormat. And that seemingly dumb comment ended up being a gold nugget of inspiration. We ended up creating a mini experience for guests. They walked in, putting up branded window clings, and created this huge mouth with teeth on the floor. It was a cling. And they ate it all up. They walked in, they were like, "Oh my God, this is great." We didn't win the business, But it was a project that my creative director realized that I could actually think conceptually. And so then from there, I graduated from deck building to actually designing conceptual ads. So that was a huge milestone. Yeah.
That's
There's
awesome.
another milestone there too, but
Yeah, well, we'll come back to a couple of them. So
yeah.
again, it's nice to kind of just talk about through stories, documenting the different parts of your career, because I think that's the biggest one. It's one of the biggest question with the young and the next generation of creatives, is that it's so, like, the future is so hard to visualize and so hard to see. How do you get from A to B to C, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and it's easy for us to look back and be like, okay, I did school, or I'm in the middle of school, or, but how do I get to that stage? And I think sharing these kind of stories along the way paints a little bit that is doable, but it's painting your story, right? And everybody has their own story, and I think that's the point of Creative Talk, is every guest will have their own set of stories. Now, how long were you at Alcon? Because you were there for a bit.
Yeah, about 4 years. And then I think within that 4 years, though, I think 2 years into it, we had got bought out by another company called the Marketing Arm, and then we merged. It was at that merger where there was a project for California Lottery where we were given existing assets to design like a simple shirt for Dia de los Muertos. And the direction was to just plop the scratcher ticket art on a shirt and then call it a day. But I decided that wasn't good enough. So I went further and I pulled out all the art from the scratcher ticket and used those elements to create new designs like an art director would do. I physically, in my head, I was like, okay, what would my art director do? And in this moment, and I did. And so I offered 3 options: the boring scratcher ticket on a shirt, and then presented my exploration. The client ended up choosing both of my options and pumped more money into the budget to print both designs. And I got promoted from junior art director shortly after to art director. And from there, everything just clicked. I had gained the confidence I needed in order to perform because I was resourceful, and I gained the trust of my superiors to where I almost operated independently visually on projects because they were like, go do your thing, on this. We trust you. Here's the copy. Make it happen, that kind of thing.
And that all, one of the, just to share with us, one of the clients that basically you ended up just doing, you were the photographer, you were the social media coordinator. So share a little bit about that specific project.
Oh yeah, this company has a lot of money. They're called U Theory, but they didn't have a lot of money in the budget for social media marketing. A lot of the times we had to get really scrappy and do a lot of the photo shoots ourselves, meaning me, in like the agency kitchen, blending a smoothie. So U Theory is collagen. It's like a collagen powder. They have turmeric powder, a beauty product that you basically mix into your drink, and then that's how you take it. They're supplements. I just vividly, I remember Fernando randomly would visit, Alcone, just to see how everybody was doing, because he used to also freelance there, during my time there, but we never really worked with each other. And he saw me, I'm like on my hands and my knees, and I'm taking pictures of avocado toast. And he's like, what is this? And I was like, oh, this is for social media. And I'm like on my stomach, like trying to get the angle. I'm like, adjusting lights. And like, and to tell you, I didn't have a background at all in this. I just kind of figured it out. We just did it. I just Googled, how do you do this? Literally. And that was where my research came from, and just started doing it. And we were super successful. They still have that business today. Which I'm incredibly proud of, because we paved the way for their look and feel for that social media, and they still follow it. They still follow that formula.
Mm-hmm. I still remember that day that I visited, and I saw, and you were talking about your whole setup, and I don't know if you remember, but it's that visit that you and I ended up talking some more out in the parking lot, and you'd share with me again as far as your vision, your aspiration, what you are experiencing, what your needs and desire, or what your next steps could be, would be, should be, what you want it to be. And I don't know if you remember those parking lot conversations, because then from there, where was your next adventure to?
So after feeling like I needed to learn more about business, because that's something that I just didn't know. And that was triggered by, inner office politics. I was like at the bottom of the barrel. I wasn't involved in any of that stuff, but secretly I was like, oh, I want to know like why are they having so many problems? Like I want to know why there's drama. Business side. So Fernando actually connected me with Elvis Frias, who owned his own experiential company, and he needed, at the time, he just called it an artist, a graphic designer. And after meeting with him, I told him what I did and my title. He changed the title of what he wanted to hire to an art director, and immediately he offered me a job. He was like, yes, like you are what we need. Can you come work for us? And I'm like, can I think about it? Because I was very nervous. And I actually, that day that I was thinking about it, I went to SeaWorld with my family. And I was like in SeaWorld with my phone looking at this contract. And I'm like, okay, do I leave? I'm pretty comfortable where I'm at right now. They trust me. I could do what I want, but I don't see myself like, really growing, because I've kind of learned, I've kind of hit my limit there of what I can learn. So I was just like, okay, I'm just going to tell my creative director. And so I called him from SeaWorld, and he was like, wait, I thought you were at SeaWorld. Like, why are you calling me? I was like, well, Kevin Kleber, I got a job offer. And his reaction was, oh no, how much can I give you to keep you here? And I said, Kevin, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. I love what I do and I love this job, but like, I feel like I need to continue to learn more about business side. And so he's like, okay. And that was really hard for me because I was very close with Kevin as a creative director. And, I've learned so much from him, a very smart guy. And he was just like, okay, go. And I didn't think that his reaction was going to be that nice, to be honest. So, but I was very thankful. And I went to Frias and I started doing experiential work.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the relationship, with Kevin, because I know Kevin also, and anything, I want to spend some time talking about relationship and building trust and building that connection with people. And it is something to be said for where, the younger you are, you're less conducive to wanting to reach out, wanting to look for a connection or a mentor. And I don't want to just coin it out to, the younger generation is in the mindset of like anything that's instant. I just wanted something instant. But I think that's just human nature. We all just want something a little bit easier. So it's not necessarily a young thing. It's a human thing. And it's important that we recognize that, because once we know it, then you can be intentional about putting yourself out there, about reaching out and connecting. So, with Kevin, he's brilliant. I know he's brilliant. You build that relationship. And then there's also Carlos, who is the other executive director then, and then Luis at Alcone. Just let's go on a quick tangent here. From your perspective, as far as building this relationship with creative directors, because it's easy to build a relationship with a fellow art director or another graphic designer who is your peer, who is you sitting next to, you go out to lunch with, you go out to coffee with. But reaching out to a more senior person, a creative director, what's your thought on that? Like, what kind of mindset do you put yourself into that when you're reaching out and connecting and building a relationship?
I think in order to get there, you have to be really willing to be vulnerable with yourself and tell yourself the truth. I don't know everything. I need to learn things, always ask questions, especially when you're younger and there's someone in a position who is above you and you want that position, why not reach out and ask to pick their brain? Or if they're your boss, ask them, hey, what's the expectation? I remember when I pulled Carlos Vasquez. And he thought that I was like resigning because like I was like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Like, you know, in the war room, you know, away from everybody. And I sat in front of him with a folder and a pen and paper. And I was like, all right, Los, tell me the truth. Where am I at now? And where do you need me to be? Because I'm serious about this. I want to grow. And he was like completely like, what? Like, where's this coming from? Because I wasn't getting the feedback, you know, that I needed in order to like build that confidence, right? To take that next step. And I actually got that idea of reaching out to him from you, Fernando. I was scared. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I don't want to pull him aside. But I learned from that moment that that was another pivotal moment. It got me comfortable with being uncomfortable. It was like, if I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, how am I supposed to succeed in my job? I need to ask. I need to leave my ego at the door and tell myself, I don't know everything. I need to ask questions. I need to know. That's the biggest thing.
If I may add to that, is it's leaving your ego aside, but more, I think, just as big, if not in many cases bigger, especially when you're just you're starting off your career, leaving what you're afraid aside, because it's a combination of you're afraid to look dumb. That's ego talking, right? You're afraid that you get the answer that you actually don't want to hear. Right? That's a different kind of afraid, right? That's being afraid of the future. And it's that the whole saying, the devil you know now is better than the devil that you don't know, type of thing, right?
Yeah.
You got to take that level of bravery to go in and ask those tough questions.
That's really my biggest advice, right? One of the biggest advice that I can share is don't be afraid. Like, you don't have to do this all alone, find a mentor to be your Sherpa and network and find the people in the positions you want and reach out to them on LinkedIn and ask them if you could pick their brain on how to become them. And don't be afraid of, what if I seem weird? No, the right people, the good people who genuinely want to help you will respond to you. And for those who don't, whatever,
Move on to the next one.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Right. Okay, so you were at Frias. You were there for a little bit, learned a bunch of different things. You were starting to flex a little bit of your entrepreneurial spirit also, because Frias was a scrappy, nimble company. And now what led you to your next venture from there? Because this was another pivotal moment for you and your family. You have 2 young kids. So could you share a little bit about that as far as that specific journey from your career to the balancing your family and your future?
Sure. Yeah. The tail end at Frias, it was very hard because we didn't have a lot of projects going on. And it was like on the verge of the pandemic start, actually, like maybe like a couple months before we all went into quarantine. And really what it was, how should I be? Yeah, I'm gonna be careful about this. Okay, long story short, I had a baby in August of 2019. And I knew that I wanted to kind of take a step back from being the person who had to have all the answers to somebody who could just kind of like take direction, turn my brain off a little bit, focus on the work, and then leave it at work, go home, be with my kids. That's all I wanted. And that's what led me to the next adventure. And that was a big talking point in my interview with Mint Mobile, Ultra Mobile, Mint Mobile. And for those of you who don't know, Mint Mobile, owned by Ryan Reynolds, is textbook dream job. They pay for your family's health benefits. They give you unlimited vacation, free lunch created by on-staff chef, not to mention Ryan Reynolds, that kind of thing. But yeah, so I forgot where I was going with this.
That's okay. So let me redirect a little bit, right? Like that. Yeah. There was a change in your life as all of us go through like different points and parts of our lives. There's a big shift with you and your family. There was a shift in your creativity, right? Also, yes. You want to still be creative, but you don't necessarily need to be the most senior person in the room.
Right. Yeah. So I took that job. It was just a graphic designer job. I went from senior art director to now just designer, where I had an art director above me, a creative director above me, And I wanted them to just, have all the knowledge and have that trickle down to me and just me create the work and I don't have to think much. I was I was wrong. I was wrong about that because I'm not that kind of person. So
Oh,
yeah.
no, and I was gonna say, the beautiful part about that is that you did see that side, right? And it is the best part of the story that I wanted to really kind of convey, and that's why I was kind of guiding you along with it, is that you took a step back, right? You
Mhm.
were a senior level art director. You did take a graphic design title position. You had an art director above you. You took a step back for a couple of different reasons, whether it be family, career wise, creativity wise. But that step back was necessary because you saw something. You saw a little bit how things have changed too, both from a designer standpoint and also from an art director standpoint. How leadership, you saw leadership in a completely different way. You saw leadership and mentoring in a new way, both sides of the coin of a good mentor, not so good mentor, mentor you can learn from, mentor you can get inspired from, which again, I think kind of primes you to the next thing on where
Yes.
you are.
Yes. So, number one, I needed to shift. I had left Prius in pursuit of something that I can just kind of not exactly turn my brain off, but that's what I thought I wanted, which is something that was more, well-oiled machine, like give me a silo, give me a job, and that's it. But I'm not that kind of person. I put work or effort into everything that I do, no matter how big or small it is. And one of my biggest problems, and I recognize this as a problem, is that I fail to set boundaries for myself. And to give you a backstory, I was at my unhealthiest with hypertension after having a baby. I'd gained about 20 pounds since the start of the pandemic in March. It was rough, and I didn't know how to set boundaries for myself. So I worked at my desk for 16 plus hours a day, sometimes all night, because I didn't want to let my team down. And I knew that I needed to change, or else I was literally going to kill myself. The amount of work couldn't change. So I had to step away from that. Enter Fernando, convincing me that there is more to my career path than what I had thought was the pinnacle, the dream job with the money, the benefits, the notoriety, and that I should really be thinking about me and my family, most importantly, and what I want, who I am. This all just recently unfolded, really. I quit in August of last year and came to work for ConceptZombie.
So a bit of more story to that is what all of you have heard just thus far is a nice snapshot of Christina's career, in many ways curated by her with some influence of people in her life, me being one of them. And as she's living her life, I'm living my life. There's things happening in my life. Creative aid is happening within the time frame while Christina was at Mint Mobile. All of you are happening. And along the way, ConceptZombie was growing, and I knew it needed to grow beyond me. And I knew that I needed to bring in a creative director because I was just the creative director myself, along with being the CEO, along with teaching 3 other classes, along with being the CEO and the creative director of Creative Aid, and doing the work myself. And so when I had decided that I needed a creative director, there was only one person that was really in my head. Yeah, and it's Christina. All the things that was happening with her career was this crossroad that leads us to where we are at this point. And some of you, a handful of you, have worked with Christina directly because a handful of you have been part of ConceptZombie and have been creatively directed by Christina. And I think that's part of this. That's part of the narrative on this, everyone, is just to kind of just share with you a snapshot of a career path. So that being said, I do want to make time for some of the questions. And I think some of the questions was already answered through the storytelling, which is awesome. Right? We talked about milestone. We talked about pivotal moments of your career. I mean, there was pivots left and right. Right? Every adventure was a milestone. Every pivot was a memorable pivot. Now as your role as a creative director within ConceptZombie, what has been some of your challenging parts and has been the most rewarding parts of your job thus far?
Yeah. I think the most challenging is that, like I said, ever revolving door of creatives, right? So designers coming in and out. Everyone has a different way of communicating, but also it's rewarding because I'm growing and I'm learning all of these new communication styles and getting to know people and helping them find their way. That's like the most challenging but yet rewarding thing for me.
Yeah. Well, and every time it's a new creative, new designer, it's a whole new personality. There's a whole new other now requirements to kind of get past. Every single one of us has walls that we put up just because that's what we do as humans, is help us protect ourselves. Well, then when you come and that's a whole new thing for Cristina and myself to kind of figure out how to climb over. And that's a challenge and exciting at the same time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, okay, so here's an interesting question. Did you always want to be an art director or graphic designer? And if not, what were those possible paths that you would have chosen?
Oh my goodness. I didn't even know what an art director was. So no, I didn't always want to be one. As a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian because I love animals and I get way too excited about animals. I'm the one in the Zoom meeting where it's like I see a cat or a dog and I'm like, ooh, I stop the whole meeting and I'm that one. But I mean, it started community college back at OCC years ago. I'm not even going to disclose. Some of you might know how old I am, but I'm not going to disclose that. I had no idea what I wanted to be. I kind of stumbled into like a lot of things over the years, like cartooning, psychology, early childhood development, and then came marine science, and I fell in love with studying marine biology. But when it came time to actually transfer out of community college into like, a biology program, it was so hard at the time because everybody was doing the same thing and everybody had better grades than I did. So I was unable to get into the program that I wanted because of my grades. Let me remind you, it wasn't bad. I had a 3.0, but they were looking for GPAs of 3.5 and above at the time. And so what I did was it kind of prolonged my stay at OCC. I started working at, for the college in the marine science department, and I learned that it just wasn't for me. Animals and organisms are more like my hobbies now. I couldn't see myself having to write, and this is true, I couldn't see myself having to write grants to study fish sperm for the rest of my life. So that was like the point where I kind of like took a step back. I'm like, what am I doing right now? So I had to do it. Like, it was like a quarter life crisis at this time. And I basically put post-it notes of all the points or like all the directions that I could go. And I kept going back to cartooning because I really enjoyed that class. And I really enjoy being a creator, making things. I've always made things, my own artwork from my house and curating my decorations for my house. I've always been interested in design. I love that kind of stuff. And when I worked for years back, I worked for the city of Costa Mesa, and we had like programs like, teen camp, summer camp. I always designed the shirts, but I did them in like MS Paint. I didn't know any programs, but I kind of like stumbled into the Art Institute because I thought that I was limited with my situation. And that ended up being the most important part of my career, was just going to the Art Institute, meeting the professors that I met to get me to the point where I'm at today, including Fernando.
This next follow-up question to that, it actually falls along the line with that, right? Like, you and I know, we all know like how all encompassing this world of creativity is. We don't ever turn off being a creative, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of your outlets that you enjoy other than being a designer, being a creative director, an art director? You talked about having love for pets and animals. What are some of the things that you do to kind of replenish, or re-engage you that's not necessarily within the creative side of things?
I would say maybe like, first and foremost, I'm a nurturer, like for sure. I love taking care of things, and especially animals. Like, they are a huge part of my life. I love to rescue everything that I find. I mean, my husband hates it. We only have 2 cats for a reason, because although he is allergic to cats, he let me have 2 cats. But like, if it were up to me, my house would be full of like rescued animals. But I mean, other than the animal thing, I love cooking for my family. And I think that's recently I've kind of found that hobby of just like cooking something, curating my home decor. I said that. And actually writing when I can remember to. I try to write every day, 10 minutes straight, setting a timer, pen to paper, trying not to pause at all during that 10 minutes and write about, the first subject that comes to mind, really.
All right. So as we get into 2 o'clock, I want to be mindful of everyone's time, your time. I think we covered a lot. We covered a lot about fears, past. I want to reserve one last question. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and kind of turn on my gallery. Does anybody else have any other specific questions before we start to close up this first episode of Creative Talk? Leo, you said that we should take a screen grab picture of a thumbs up on our very first episode. Definitely, we will do that. But any other questions from the group? Oh, Maribel, go ahead. Well, Maribel is typing that out.
Hey, long time no see, by the way, Fernando.
Hey, Jamie.
Hey, so my question is, earlier you stated that like you had to get over your fears and stuff. And so I was like, how were you able to overcome that? Just because like I had so much trouble production side with my job. And unfortunately today they had let me go. So like,
Okay.
yeah, so I'm like, woo. So I just wanted
Wow.
to know like how you got over that, because I want to get over that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. So sorry to hear about that. First of all, you are well connected though, through me, through Fernando. So I'm sure you're going to get back up and running. As a creator, it's so hard, right? You kind of hit a wall, and you have all these fears of letting people down, performance issues, that kind of thing. It really stems from the confidence. And the way that I gained it, not saying that this is the right way for everybody, but Fernando had shared with me, I think it was, we were in Alcone, our parking lot talk days. You were like, you need to like join something. You need to do something. You need a hobby. And I'm like, I have a hobby. And you're like, no, you need to like be active. And I'm like, oh, I guess you're right. Growing up, I played sports all my life growing up. And then when I hit, college, it kind of stopped all of that. And then, fast forward to this talk, and he was like, join a gym or like Taekwondo, because Fernando does Taekwondo. And I laughed about that, right? And I was like, oh, whatever. But it was probably the best advice, because I did try it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. I need to be active. I need to be healthier. I joined a gym, a kickboxing gym, and I trained Muay Thai. And that gave me tremendous confidence in like how powerful I felt in my ability for my body to do those things. That all transferred over into my work life. It did wonders for, my personal life, and it did wonders for me just being more confident in raising my hand and say, hey, I don't think that's right. Or, hey, you didn't give me enough of what I needed in order to succeed. And really, because other people have their jobs in the agency, if you say that, if you raise your hand, it's like, hey, I don't have everything that I need in order to succeed at this job. They're going to try everything that they need to do in order to get you everything that you need, thus making your life easier. So I know that doesn't like completely answer your question, but you need to kind of find what fills you and gives you confidence, and transfer that energy into your work life.
Yeah, thank you. To add to that, and I was just having this conversation with somebody at yesterday's class, whether you're religious or spiritual or whatever the case may be, if you ever find yourself or anybody in your family or close friends or whatever the case may be, when you're praying for something, right? You're praying for, please, I want to be more patient, or I want to be more creative, or I want to be braver, right? Or I want to have the courage to do this, right? I want to stop fearing X. The universe, God, whatever you want to call it, isn't going to be like, bam, you're braver, right? Bam, you have patience. No, what's going to happen is the universe is going to give you something to be patient about, right? The universe is going to give you something to be brave about, right? God is going to give you something to be courageous about, right? And you're going to be fearful. You're going to have impatience, and you're going to find that courage because that's the situation that you're in, right? And I think that's one of the flip of the switch in our minds, that we're we're always thinking that we're going to get there because we asked for it. No, we're going to be placed in that situation to be that we've been asking for. So I think it's a change of mindset to kind of help us put things in context. Maribel, were you able to? Oh, here we go. She says, thank you so much for everything. For people that are graduating soon, other than possibly finding a mentor, doing personal work, etc., what are the things that graduates forget to think about for the art world?
Let's see.
I would say networking.
Yes. Stay
100%.
and stay a student. Stay a student, 100%. Read more. Start writing every day to help you express the way you feel and think in words. This will help you become a stronger presenter. Again, you don't have to do all of this on your own. Like you said, find that mentor. But yeah, really networking, your mentor can help with that too.
Mm-hmm. I think part of, if I may add to that, is that this for everyone, have a default setting, have something that when you don't know what to do, that becomes that thing that you do, almost not having to think too much about it. And the reason why, the first thing that pops in my mind is my networking, is because that's my default state, right? When I don't know what to do, I go network, I go meet with people, I call people randomly. I mean, how many of you have gotten a phone call from me randomly? Here's a little secret. As much as you thought you needed a phone call from me, I needed a phone call from you, because that was my default setting. I was trying to figure things out. So I'm going to go reach out to my network and ask how you're doing, or ask how they're doing. And that kind of resets me. So I think finding a little bit of your default, and whatever that might be, everyone's default is very different from each other. Cool. Jamie says, thank you. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and talk about like one last question. As far as we talked about the past, we talked about the current, we talked about all the hard work and all the connections that kind of led to this. And there's a great question here that I thought was fantastic. As far as the future, what future creative plans, Cristina, from your end, can you share? And it doesn't have to be something tangible and solid. It could just be a vision that you might have.
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what? I think I've talked to you about this, Fernando. Right now I'm really big on reading the works of the Stoics, and how they say that, you're never guaranteed tomorrow. So when I hear like future creative plans, it's like, oh man, right now is what I'm focusing on. And right now I plan on helping to grow ConceptZombie and continue to offer creative support for our clients. And I mean, who knows, maybe participate in the gallery show.
Yes. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I think that can conclude our first episode of Creative Talk. Before we leave, I do want to do a quick screen grab of everybody saying what's up, or hey, and thumbs up, say yeah, and big old smile, please. Awesome. Cristina, oh my gosh, I cannot thank you enough to being part of this. What an incredible story that you've shared with us. I hope, and I know, I don't even hope, I know that this has been inspiring for everyone. It's been an honor for me to have been part of your adventure along the way. And there's so much more to come. So I know you're busy between family, work, your boss that's always throwing work at you. We had that conversation. But thank you so much, Cristina. So everyone, can we give it up to Cristina, please?
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome. So that concludes our Creative Talk. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be part of this. Thank you for watching this awesome first episode of Creative Talk. And if you want to be part of this, reach out. If you have any questions for future guests, go to our chat. I'm going to do a YouTube thing. If you want more, follow us, click on that subscribe. I never thought I would say anything like that. We'll edit this whole part out. But stay awesome, stay extraordinary. Thank you, everyone.